Hello, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I show you several ways to use a brush, several things you can do with landscape painting in order to change the environment from what is actually there, how to get depth into your painting. A few things. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope if you do, you like, subscribe, share with your friends. That's my cats hissing at each other. And thank you very much for watching. I want to say that your likes and subscribes help the algorithm promote my channel, and that's a good thing for me. And thank you if you can find time to do that. So here's the actual photograph I took on the side of the path which inspired this painting. As you can see, it's nothing like the finished painting. The nicest thing about being an artist is that you can enhance your pictures any way you want to. And just further along that path is a beautiful view of water and a flock of white pelicans, which I couldn't distinguish between them. They were a group, and all I could see was white with grey shadow in the I didn't really see them in great detail, let's put it that way. I did think they would be a great addition to my painting, and I also wanted to put water in the painting. And this is the kind of thing you can do when you're an artist. You can take your photographs to inspire you, to give you an idea of what you want in a painting, and then you can rearrange everything. You can rearrange the trees, the shrubs, the birds, anything else that you see that you want in the painting but is not quite in the position that you want it to be in. That's what makes a painting different to a photograph. That's a skill that I don't have. I'm using a 9x12 canvas, and I like to use these because I paint quite a lot of pictures and it's easy to store. And when you're demonstrating something, you don't want a big canvas that you've got to pay for storage. And I don't have the storage at home to keep all my work. And in 1 year, I will produce quite a lot of work. I have my usual palette laid out on palette paper, which you can buy in a pad. And I just cut them to the size of this little IKEA tray and use that for my palette. And I am starting on my sky. I want it fairly dark blue at the top. And I'm using French ultramarine blue and titanium white. And, you know, if you look at the dome of the sky, it's a darker blue. And then as you get down to the horizon line, it becomes paler. I should say I have my usual palette of titanium white, primary yellow, raw sienna, raw umber, French ultramarine blue, sap green, and alizarin crimson. I always dampen my brush before I put it into the paint, and I am painting with acrylics, and that makes it easier to move the paint across the surface because the canvas surface, although they are gessoed, I haven't gessoed this one. I haven't prepared it with that acrylic base, which gives you a smoother surface. So if you dip your water in the brush, it just dilutes the water, it dilutes the paint a little bit and helps with moving it across the canvas. I'm not doing an actual horizon line in this painting, even though I'm putting water in. I'm just sort of suggesting a lighter background at the bottom, and it's not straight by any means. I'm going to put an island in on which I'm going to put my white pelicans. In the lower third of the painting will be a green scrubby foreground where I'll paint my goldenrod, I think it is, and some little lazy Susans. But I don't paint either of those in great detail. I sort of mix in a sap green, and also I put a raw sienna in there just to get that sort of browny, scrubby, dead plant, or just that sort of scrubby background to it. I don't want to make it bright green like a lawn because it's not bright green that way. There are many colors in scrub, and I just want to suggest a very rough patch of ground. I tend to put a paintbrush in my hand and then paint the entire picture using it. It's best if you can use a selection of brushes because then you get a selection of strokes. I do use a fan brush for the scrub. I'll show you how I do that. First though, I'm going to show you how to paint clouds. I'm using my flat brush and straight titanium white at this point. And that white, as it dries, will dull down. So I'll have to come in and put some more white on top of that cloud just to reinforce it, to make it look more cloudy, if that's a term. But I'm going to mix the French ultramarine blue with alizarin crimson to give a shadow base to that cloud. It gives me a sort of bluish, purplish colour, and it will sort of make the clouds look more real. You'll see what I mean. I just put it on quite roughly at first. Nothing in particular. And then I go over it with a dollar store powder brush. And I'm just sort of blending it a little bit just to sort of make it look cloud-like and fluffy. Think fluffy clouds, and hopefully those will come out of the end of your brush. That's what my teacher used to tell me, and I find it works for me. It might work for you. I'm just going to tap on some more titanium white to the tops, leaving the shadow as it is, and just to the very tops. And I'll probably use the powder brush to blend it a little bit. I couldn't find another powder brush to work with, and this one was a bit wet, so I dried it off on paper towel. Hopefully it'll work. It did the trick, but it is a good idea to use them when they're very dry, and I just couldn't find one at the moment. If you don't mind getting covered in paint, you can just use your finger just to blend in those brush strokes and give you that soft, blended, cloudy effect. Now I'm going to work on the scrub, and I'm using a fan brush for this, and I'm mixing my greens. I've got this pool of colour in the middle of my palette, which started off with French ultramarine blue. I added sap green there, and I've got some raw sienna in there. So I've got this sort of bluey, greenish, brownish kind of pool of colour in the middle of my palette. And I'm just using the edge of the palette, the fan brush, to pull up sort of some grasses and just sort of dot texture onto that scrubby piece of ground. If you turn it on its edge and use it sort of north to south long ways, you can get taller grasses and shrubs out of that. And that's what I'm doing for my goldenrod. I'll turn the brush on its edge. That just gives me taller scrub. So I'm fairly pleased with that effect. It's not a smooth lawn down to the water. It is this scrubby ground, and I think I've achieved that. As I go on, I add whatever paint is on my brush to the foreground. It just adds texture and interest, in my opinion. I don't add great detail to anything. It's what comes out of the end of my brush, something that will give the illusion of scrub and grasses and weed. And I don't add a lot of detail to my paintings. That's just not the way I paint. And you might want to add more detail to put in more finer points. For instance, on the little daisies, I didn't put centers on them, but you can still get the impression that there are daisies in there. I haven't done that at this point. I'm using a small round to paint the daisy petals, and I start off with straight primary yellow, but it's a little transparent, so I have to mix in some titanium white, which gives it some opacity. And now you can see the petals. But as I say, I don't go into great detail with this, as they are just little blobs of flowers. And the eye reads them as daisies. That's how you interpret them without looking at too much detail. You think, oh, there's a bunch of yellow flowers there. I use the same mixture for my goldenrod. I just dot it on. I don't go into detail. There's a lot of little tiny florets in goldenrod. I just dot on little patches of yellow paint, and your eye will read that as goldenrod. I love living in Florida. It's the end of November here, and we have goldenrod and yellow daisies. What could be better? I'm going to do the same thing with these white pelicans, which are actually enormous birds. And but I don't want to get into the detail. I want to suggest a group of white ocean, well, they're not ocean, are they? They're coastal birds. And so I'm just dotting the white on there. I probably will add a little grey in there as well. And I'm suggesting a bunch of white pelicans out there. If you live down here, you'll know they're white pelicans, even if you don't see them so well. And I'm also adding some color to the water. It's not, when you look at water, it's not totally one color or the other. It's patchy. There'll be areas where the sky is reflected and areas where there is just light against that bank, for instance, and of that little island. And it's very reflective of whatever is in the local environment. Trees, shrubs, birds, clouds, just about anything if you look at water carefully. I paint in these birds using raw umber and French ultramarine blue. And they're a little dark. I don't like them, and I end up painting them out entirely and redoing them. One thing I will say about the birds is they're going in toward the center of the painting. You don't want anything that's flying out of the painting, or it will take your eye out. You want things situated so that your eye circulates around the painting, into the painting. You want things that lead your eye. And birds flying out of a painting will take your viewers straight out. I decided that my foreground needed a little more interest and depth of color. So I've used French ultramarine blue and some green. And I'm just sort of dotting it around a little bit here and there, just to give a little added depth and shadow. There wasn't enough shadow in the foreground, and this provides the shadow and the depth to the painting. And as you can see, I'm using the fan brush. Did I say that? I love fan brushes, especially this one. I've had it about 30 years. It's a bristle brush, which helps you when it comes to sort of dotting paint on. I showed my daughter the painting and she said, "Mum, you need a heron in there. You often see herons at the edge of water fishing, don't you?" And I agreed with her. And I didn't want to go hunting for one of my sketches, and I decided to freehand this. So don't take too much notice because it does not look good. And I change it, and I just have a sort of hint of a bird in the final painting. There, you see, it's barely there. It doesn't catch your eye. It doesn't stop your eye from wandering around the painting. It's a shadow bird. I don't mind getting covered in paint, and I do use my fingers sometimes to blend things. I think it works quite well. I like to get a little alizarin crimson into my paintings. I feel that it always adds depth, shadow, charm to a painting for me. I love it because it's quite transparent, and whatever is beneath it comes through. Slightly changed, obviously, because of the crimson over the top. But it adds a glaze, a depth. It adds another level to the painting. Okay, so this is where I painted those birds out because they were too dark. It took a little smudging around, but I eventually mixed up a paler grey and put them back in exactly the same position. So here I am working on the clouds again. I think this is about the third or fourth time. And I've pretty much finished this little painting. I think we've covered a few techniques, ideas, tips, whatever you want to call it. And I'm fairly pleased. I think it turned out quite well. I think it has distance and depth to it, which is something I'm always looking for. I don't like to see paintings that are too flat. I like to see something that I feel I could walk into that scene, walk around and explore it. And if I can't do that, then the painting doesn't work for me. And I think I've achieved that with this one, so I'm happy with it. I hope you are too. And if you enjoyed it, please, I'm going to nag you again. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends, and that helps my channel grow. And if you've already done that, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm really appreciative of that. I know people don't always want to be bothered, but it means a lot to YouTubers to get those likes. So thank you, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.